Hello and welcome to Farming Today, a presentation of Caribbean Chemicals and brought to you in association with the Ministry of Agriculture. On this week's presentation, Martin Lopez is in Lethem. He recorded some programs for us, and we'll be sharing those programs with you on this week's edition of Farming Today. Farming Today is a presentation of Caribbean Chemicals. As I mentioned, it is produced for television, though by Matrix Video Productions and Advertising. We will be back after these messages. Here's an important notice. Do you know that it is illegal to import, store, distribute, sell, and purchase antibiotics without a license or prescription, as the case may be? According to the Antibiotic Act of 1952, owners of livestock and other animals are not permitted to purchase and use antibiotics unless prescribed by a veterinarian. It should be noted that the misuse of antibiotics could result in the development of resistance to the very antibiotic, which in turn will pose health risks to the animal and to humans. The GLDA advises that farmers should not administer antibiotics to animals unless prescribed by a veterinarian. Non-compliance with this act will result in fines and imprisonment. A message from the Guyana Livestock Development Authority, Ministry of Agriculture. Over the last 10 years, seed treatment has been proven to be very effective in protecting rice plants from damage by early season pests, such as water weevils, leaf miners, and caterpillars. This protection can last for up to 30 days. In so doing, it allows for better establishment of the rice plants and later no bare spots in the field. Seed treatment also negates the need for using harmful pesticides during the first 30 days of the crop and therefore allows the buildup of beneficial insects such as the ladybird beetle, damselflies, dragonflies, and spiders, which will later prove useful against paddy bugs at every stage of their life cycle. Seed treatment involves the application of fipronil at 20% soluble concentrate in a spray can to germinated seed. The mix is 1 liter of fipronil to 2.5 gallons of water to treat 10 120-pound bags of paddy. This can be done manually as seen here. The seed is spread on a level surface and the chemical applied using a spray can. It is then turned and sprayed a few times until the farmer is satisfied that he has achieved complete wetting of his seed paddy. Treated seed paddy is then covered and allowed to be incubated or pressed for the normal 36 to 48 hours. Then it is ready for sowing. It should be noted that in treating the seed, farmers applying the pesticide should wear the appropriate protective gear as seen here to protect against the harmful effects of the chemical on the skin or if inhaled.
From 2010, since I started my seed treatment, that's when I started and I've continued. I've never stopped because I've seen the benefit of seed treatment. And I've seen increased yield, I've seen production better because it actually gives you 35 to 40 days that you don't have to go back into the field and do any kind of a pesticide control because that actually helps you. So farmers, I'm advising you and I'm giving you that advice because I've been doing this since 2010 and I'd like to see farmers benefit also from these 6 points.
Seed treatment is a critical step in the realization of higher yield. If you have not yet adopted this practice, try it this crop. A message from the GRDB, Ministry of Agriculture. Region 5, West Berbice, is the largest single contributor to Guyana's rice production annually, with some 45% of national production. Region 5 is also the largest contributor of beef and other meats from animals reared on lands in that region. All lands in Region 5 fall under the purview of the Mahicum-Iconia-Barry Agricultural Development Authority, MMA-ADA, an agency of the Ministry of Agriculture. In recognition of the importance of its role in the production levels of the region, the Ministry of Agriculture has been expending millions on not only rehabilitating the neglected D&I structures and dams, but has been retooling the entity with millions in excavators and other equipment and tools for the work ahead. The completion of Phase 2 begins this year and has been catered for in the 2021 national budget. Agriculture Minister Zulfikar Mustafa says the MMA is key to doubling rice production in 5 years. The future for agriculture in Guyana is exciting. Let's all play our part. A message from the MMA Ministry of Agriculture.
Good viewers, and welcome to Farming Today. As you could notice from the scenery that we are looking at and from the music that you hear in the background, we are in the Rupununi We are pretty close to the Brazilian border, hence the music, hence the scenery. But let's have a look at something here concerning some farming. Here we have some pak choy that is being grown in a grow box. And let's look at what it is we have here. This part over here would have been cleaned. It would have been weeded out. But look over here and look at the size of the pak choy. Within a very short space of time, these weeds will come up. And this particular weed that you have here is a weed they call pigweed. Now, it's called pigweed because pigs like it. And I remember there was a time I grew some sweet peppers and a pig got away and went into my peppers, and I thought the pig was going to eat up all the sweet pepper and dig up everything. And all the pig did was eat this pigweed. It really tastes that great. Now, I don't recommend that you let a pig go into your garden, but that's just to let you know that this is pigweed and why it is called pigweed. But there's something really terrible about this kind of weed. If you try to pick this weed up, watch out what's going to happen. You're going to see, look at all of this root that comes up here. This is a really, really powerful weed. And you find that this over on the other side has been weeded a very short time ago. And although it's weeded over a really short time ago, what happens is that it keeps coming back. So we're going to be looking at what is some of the things that we could probably do maybe to help us out in a situation like this. The other thing with this particular type of weed, well, the ground is very soft now, but this weed breaks off very easily. So what happens is that, when you try to weed it, it actually breaks off in your hand and remains down there. When you come with a hoe, you clear it off, and that whole big set of root that we saw remains right inside that ground, ready to go back again. So this is a really miserable kind of weed. And there are other weeds here. You have this grass weed over here. And again, watch what grass is doing. Look at this. Look at the amount of root that is in here. So you're getting a really, really powerful plant here growing that you don't really want to grow, and it's going to be taking everything away from your plants. Let's have a look at some other pak choy and some other things and see what's happening there. This is what you'll normally do in a situation like this, right? Of course, this is a very nice raised bed here where we would be, because everything is at a nice height. So what you'll find that people will normally do, they will have their weeds growing here, and like what we saw before, what they'll do, they'll come through with some little implement and just weed it up, and it's going to be looking something like this. As you can see, pak choy more or less the same size, but somebody would have come in here and they would have started to dug it up. This would have been done probably, by my best recollection, probably literally about 2 or 3 days ago. But look, you could actually see some of these new things actually ready to come back out again. Right now, I don't know if this one was left before, but obviously, definitely you're going to have some stuff. Look at this one here that was hiding. That's a broken piece. This one here, this will be another root just started up. So what really happened here is that as soon as you're going here with your hand tool and you start digging up, you say, wow, I've done a wonderful job, I've done a great job. But what has happened is that you probably just planted back the weeds. As you can see, if you look carefully, you're just seeing all these tiny little weeds here. Obviously, and look how big the root system is. I mean, if you could get your crops growing like that, it'll be absolutely wonderful. And of course, you're going to be missing out some. So you might have one. This is probably one that was missed out. No, this is new. Look at this. This is obviously just a new weed seed that has just set down. So the question is, what it is that you're actually going to do. Well, at Kerbin Chemicals, we realize that nature needs a little bit of a help. And what we've done, we've introduced a new product, and this new product is a new herbicide that we call Lazio. Right now, Lazio is what we call a pre-emergent herbicide. You'll be using it for particular crops. Make sure you read the label to make sure that you're using it correctly and with the correct crops. But basically, what you would do is you spray actually before you plant. If you have a very large seeded crop, you could spray it as soon as at the same time that you're planting the seed. And sometimes when you have some larger crops, that are growing, and you've maybe weeded around it and you've got a clear spot, well then you could go and you could use the Lazio and spray it. And what is going to happen is that Lazio's main job is to kill all these little weed seeds and prevent the weeds from germinating. So when you have weeds and when you have little pieces of weed, as soon as they start putting out that little radical and they enter into the soil and they meet up with the Lazio, well then they are going to be having a problem. And those are not going to be able to survive. Now remember, when you're putting in your pak choi seedling, you're going to be digging a hole, and that pak choi is probably going to be planted maybe about 2-3 inches, the roots will go down. So in fact, the pak choi roots and the roots of any seedling that you put in is going to be well below the surface and well below where the Lazio is going to be affecting. So this is why when you're, particularly for these leafy kind of crops, now you can imagine, let's use our imagination. Imagine a farmer growing pak choi, maybe an acre of pak choi, and he has a pak choi growing like this, and weeds start to come up. How much labor is it going to require for the farmer to go in between and pull up all the weeds? How much labor it is going to require to go in there and try to very carefully spray something inside of here to get rid of these weeds. And as you can see, these weeds are broadleaf weeds, right? You can see it's a broadleaf weed. So this is not a weed that you're going to be able to kill with a grass killer like Fusil or any selective grass killer. So you're going to be needing something, and something is going to be very useful if you could have a product like Lazio that is going to be killing the seeds of the plant, of the weeds that are coming up, and therefore protecting your plant from weeds. Now, what we're going to be taking a look at what a bed will look like and how we'll be looking to apply the Lazio to the bed. Use Lazio. It is going to be important to make sure that the soil is actually well watered first. So what you're going to be doing is using a hose, you're going to be using your irrigation equipment, you could be using a watering can, you could be using any implement what you want, but you want to make sure that the soil gets wet. Now, the reason for that is that you're going to want, when you apply this, you don't want to be applying too much water. And the recommendation that we give there, which is about 30 to 45 mils per gallon, is designed to work walking reasonably fast through a bed like this that is pretty well watered and pretty well soaked. Because remember, this is going to, you want this to establish like a sort of a layer over the top of the bed. So that with that layer over the top of the bed, it means that any seed that germinates in that layer is going to have a problem, because what's going to happen as soon as the radical comes out, the radical is going to encounter the chemical, and once it encounters the chemical, it is going to affect the radical and it is going to damage any further growth that the seed might look to make. Now, this might in some ways look like is a bit of a problem, and it might be taking some time and that kind of thing. But this is one of those situations where it pays for you to take the time, take the effort, and do the job before you actually plant. So that when you do plant, and in the course of your crop, you're not going to really be having to be spending so much time on weeding. Yes, it does take a little bit more. Sometimes it doesn't, because you could just put on your Hoyo and it will do the watering for you. Sometimes the weather is rainy and you don't have to worry about it. But when you reach that point where you're ready to plant, somehow, some way, you have to make sure that that soil manages to get wet. If you don't do that, then the results tend to be disappointing. And it tends to be disappointing because the chemical just remains flat on the surface and does not get that little couple of fractions of an inch into the soil that is going to prevent your weeds from germinating. So here we see the situation here where we have a bed. This bed has been prepared. I'm not sure what is going to be planted in it. It might well be pak choi, it might well be some rubella, some poi, anything that you want to plant. You try to stay away from things like the, what we call it, like the pumpkins and the watermelons and the squashes and so on. But you can still take a chance with them, but that's on your own risk. That's a little bit of chance that you're taking when you're doing that. But for most of the crops, it works very well. And it is particularly useful when you're looking at crops that are going to be planted very close together, So it's going to be very difficult to control the weeds once the weeds come up. So in a situation like that, it certainly pays you to take the extra time to water and to go and apply the Lazio to the soil, as we're going to see in a short time. I'm setting up our spray can so that we could apply the Lazio, and we're going to put in about 2 gallons of water in here, because this is what approximately will do the amount of land that we're going to be treating with the Lazio. Okay, so we're putting in about 60 mils of the Lazio. We have 2 gallons in the can. We're going to be measuring out 60 mils. Now this is going to be doing the area that we have in prepared to plant. All right, so yeah, that's about right. That will do that'll do 2 gallons. All right, so let's put that in there and give it a quick little stir, and we're on the way. All right, so we put in there the 60 mils, into about 2 gallons of water, and we're going to cover up now. We're going to head into the spray. Now, what you'll normally do in a situation like this is to put some water. I just got. No. Okay, so I'm going to just rinse off everything. Make sure we can get everything out of the measuring can, so to make sure everything gets into the can, and then we're going to be covering up and we're going to be doing our application. Spray man here, Carl, from deep south Rupununi, and he's going to be applying the Lazio, and this is the first time, so he's going to be the first man in the Rupununi to be applying Lazio to the soil. So a bit of a little moment of history here for him and for the whole of Whiting Ranch. And in fact, this is a brand new product that was brought in by Caribbean Chemicals, and some of you may have been fortunate enough to use it. Some of you may have been talking with our agronomists and may already be familiar with it. So this might not be news to you, but today we're going to go ahead and do our application to our the land that has been already been prepared. Alright, let's cut that. Then when you got it and started, Carl actually spraying the Lazio. What we're doing is that this amount is going to be doing this area that we have here, which will be approximately about 1,000 square feet. So we're doing this amount, so that this should be roughly the amount. Now the rate we have is 30 to 45 mils on the on our label, and that we look at as a good average, because unfortunately a lot of people are not too good at calculating things like the area and so on. So we prefer to just use a rate that will be a reasonable application that we're going to be using on something like this. But for those of you who would want to do the mathematics, what this will entail will be, you're looking at roughly 2 liters to an acre. So for somebody who is spraying, let us say, one of those tomato farms in Bath Settlement, that will be roughly 1/4 acre. You're going to be using one single bottle of the 500 ml Lazio. So it's all very much in a nice, how shall I put it, a nice convenient size. So you're going to be using about a bottle of Lazio for 1/4 acre, maybe a little less, maybe a little bit more, but you're going to be using something like that. Now remember, you're going to be using that for most of your crops, like your tomatoes, your peppers. It'll work nicely for things like your celery and so on, that have a big problem with weeds, and very difficult to control those weeds. But you want to be a little bit more careful about using it for things like your cucumbers, your watermelons, and so on. This is why I think it's a good idea when you're doing your watermelons to plant them close in the row and with a distance between the rows. So that means that you're going to be, you have a space in between that you could apply something like your Lazio that will not really be affecting the watermelon too much. Now what we're going to do here is that we're going to be spraying out the entire 2 gallons. Alright, so by spraying out this entire 2 gallons, we know that we've gotten the amount of Lazio that we want on the crop. So we were looking at a sort of approximation. So this, which will be roughly, the calculation I made, this is somewhere around 800, not quite 1,000 square feet. And we're using it at pretty much a lower rate, so we could afford to go through here. And what we're going to be doing is spraying out the whole thing. So this is one of the things that suggests. You're looking at about 2 gallons, will do about 1,000 square feet. So for those of you who are a little bit more mathematically inclined, might want to remember something like that. And if you're doing it that way, make sure and spray the entire can out. So that way you know that you've gotten the amount of chemical that you need. So we have here Carl, he is just going over it again. He is a very energetic guy and therefore he's walking a little bit fast. So if I were doing it, I'll be very, very slow. So I put in a calculation for my rate of walking, which would have been a lot slower than that. I tend to take things a lot easier, a lot slower. These guys here, young, they're very energetic, very strong, very powerful guys. So he has gotten through the spraying a lot quicker than I would have. So we're just making sure that he's going to be getting the full amount of Lazio onto the ground, and that way we know that the land is going to be properly protected from all those miserable weeds that are going to be coming up. Now we're probably going to be planting in here some of the poi. We might not be doing pak choy here. So he's just making sure that he's not going to be getting too much weeds coming up in the area at this particular point in time. All right. In today's program, we have been looking at a new product and actually doing the program in a pretty new place. We are in the Rupununi Savannas, as you can see behind me. We have the horses there in the background. We have the pastures. And also we are still growing our crops down here. And like everywhere else in Guyana, one of the problems that you're always going to have when you're growing crops is that problem of weeds. It's always there. It's really a big problem all the time. Now, particularly when you're looking to grow something like your greens that are pretty close together, you're talking about things like pak choy, things like cabbage, things like lettuce. All of these things that way it is pretty difficult to weed. And sometimes you're also talking about crops like bora and so on that easily you could get a lot of weed growing up in between and a lot of weed actually interfering with the leaf growth of the plant. And particularly the crops like bora that you would put on some sort of trellis or on some sort of raise it off the ground, like how you would have tomatoes and have them lifted off the ground. A lot of times, just among all the other problems that they get with weeds, the weeds touching the leaves could be bringing all sorts of diseases and so on from the soil. The other thing too with a lot of weed around, even with those type of crops, you just get the wind slowing down, you get the place very stagnant, you get the place very humid, and you're having perfect conditions for the growth of bacteria and the growth of fungus. And those fungi and bacteria we're talking about are not those that are beneficial to the plant, but those that are not going to be beneficial to the plant. So to try to assist the farmer in controlling the weeds, Carbain Chemicals has introduced Lazio. And Lazio, as I've been explaining during the course of this program, is what we call a pre-emergent herbicide. It's a herbicide that you use before the crop actually emerges. And the idea behind it is that it is going to kind of coat the soil with a protective layer that is going to damage any weed seeds that are going to be growing through there. As soon as that weed seed sticks out that little radical, the Lazio is going to damage that radical and prevent the seed from growing. And we have seen in several cases on the coast where this has been of tremendous benefit to the farmer. And we think particularly in these times where you tend to get rain at times when you don't expect it, and where under irrigation you start getting weeds coming up that maybe you didn't even expect to have or you didn't see before. Using something like Lazio is going to be a major help. I hope you've enjoyed this program. I've certainly enjoyed bringing it to you. Farming Today is part sponsored by Caribbean Chemicals. This is Martin Lopez saying so long, till next time.
In light of recent flooding and the lodging of floodwaters in some communities, the Ministry of Agriculture through the GLDA is warning of the dangers lurking in stagnant floodwaters. Leptospirosis is caused by bacteria that results in severe damage to the liver, kidneys, and other organs of both animals and humans. One risk factor includes walking or playing in floodwaters, especially floodwaters that have become stagnant. Leptospirosis is transmitted through the urine of infected rodents, livestock, and pets. The Leptospira bacteria can enter the body of animals and humans through drinking, through cuts in the skin, or through mucous membranes in the eyes, nose, and mouth. Symptoms of leptospirosis in both animals and humans include fever, jaundice, vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain, loss of appetite, weakness, stiffness, and severe muscle pain. In light of the current rainy season and widespread flooding, livestock and pet owners are advised to implement good agricultural practices and, where possible, have your animals vaccinated against this disease immediately. A message from the Guyana Livestock Development Authority, Ministry of Agriculture. Over the last 10 years, seed treatment has been proven to be very effective in protecting rice plants from damage by early season pests such as water weevils, leaf miners, and caterpillars. This protection can last for up to 30 days. In so doing, it allows for better establishment of the rice plants and later no bare spots in the field. Seed treatment also negates the need for using harmful pesticides during the first 30 days of the crop and therefore allows the buildup of beneficial insects such as the ladybird beetle, damselflies, dragonflies, and spiders, which will later prove useful against paddy bugs at every stage of their life cycle. Seed treatment involves the application of fipronil at 20% soluble concentrate in a spray can to germinated seed. The mix is 1 liter of fipronil to 2.5 gallons of water to treat 10 120-pound bags of paddy. This can be done manually as seen here. The seed is spread on a level surface and the chemical applied using a spray can. It is then turned and sprayed a few times until the farmer is satisfied that he has achieved complete wetting of his seed paddy. Treated seed paddy is then covered and allowed to be incubated or pressed for the normal 36 to 48 hours. Then it is ready for sowing. It should be noted that in treating the seed, farmers applying the pesticide should wear the appropriate protective gear as seen here to protect against the harmful effects of the chemical on the skin or if inhaled.
From 2010, since I started my seed treatment, that's when I started, and I've continued. I've never stopped because I've seen the benefit of seed treatment. And I've seen increased yield, I've seen production better because it actually gives you 35 to 40 days that you don't have to go back into the field and do any kind of a pesticide control, because that actually helps you. So farmers, I'm advising you and I'm giving you that advice because I've been doing this since 2010 and I'd like to see farmers benefit also from these 6 points.
Seed treatment is a critical step in the realization of higher yield. If you have not yet adopted this practice, try it this crop. A message from the GRDB, Ministry of Agriculture. Well, that's all the time we have on this week's edition of Farming Today, a presentation of Caribbean Chemicals, and brought to you in association with the Ministry of Agriculture. Those farmers who are still going cultivating with the hope of planting, sowing their crops, remember seed treatment is an important component of the 6 points to a successful rice crop. You want to ensure that you treat your seed. The drug of choice is recommended by the GRDB is fipronil. So you want to ensure that you have that so that you're able to have a properly treated seed with protection for up to 30 days. All right? For those of you who have not yet vaccinated, we want to urge that you get vaccinated. Never too late. Go get your vaccine. If you haven't done the first dose, then go get it. If you've done the first dose and due for the second dose, don't think you're safe. Go get your second dose. And for those of you who are waiting for the arrival of the Sputnik second dose, that is going to happen soon, so you will be able to have your second dose as well. Alright? Until next time then, Christopher Holder saying so long. See you around.